Welcome to this class on the chakras. So, chakras. If you take visible light and you shine it through a prism, the light will break into 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and finally violet, the colors that we see in a rainbow. Similarly, if you take pure consciousness and you shine it through a prism, it will break into 7 different frequencies of the 7 primary chakras, which have the resonating colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and finally violet through those ascending frequencies. So it's also important to know, even before I start this lecture, that no one totally understands exactly what chakras are or how they work, because they are infinitely complex and paradoxical, and all the information I convey to you in this class is from my own subjective perspective and what I've personally experienced. And it's also really bizarre because we can't physically prove they exist, yet we can all internally experience them through various modalities we'll get to in this class. So they are probably the most fascinating, complex, paradoxical, and interesting things that exist. And I find endless fascination and interest when studying this particular topic, and I'm sure that you will as well. So basically what chakras are in the most simplest terms is they're energy wheels or vortexes of energy that vibrate at 7 different frequencies that power our consciousness. You can consider them to be the engines of consciousness. You know, cars have engines and light bulbs have power sources, and we never really think, you know, what exactly is powering our physical body? What is it that's causing this vehicle to animate itself all of the time? And most people say, oh, well, it's powered by food and water. But you can fast for very long periods of time going without food and water. I think the longest recorded dry fast is about 18 days. So one has to wonder, what is powering the physical body during that time? It can't be the food or the water if someone's going that long without those things. And it can't be the sun, because we also are able to live and survive during the night. And it can't be, you know, rain or nutrients from the earth, because we're not directly plugged into the earth like plants are. And then, there are numerous places on the earth where it doesn't rain for very long periods of time. And so one eventually comes to the conclusion that there is something else that's powering the body that is not, immediately perceptible to our physical sense. Also, we also have non-physical senses that can perceive, feel, and know the chakras. And so chakra is the Sanskrit word that means energy wheel, and so you can visualize them as these wheels of light that power your consciousness within your physical body. And so we have 7 primary chakras inside of our physical body. We have 5 primary chakras outside of the physical body and countless minor chakras inside and outside the body. For the sake of this class, we're going to primarily focus on the 7 major internal chakras of the body, just because that is more than enough information to go through in one class, but there are also other chakras both within and outside of the body. So, the 7 primary chakras along the base of the spine are the root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown going up the spine. But inside the body, we also have chakras in our hands that we can use for energy healing modalities. We have a chakra at the base of the feet, which is called the Earth Star chakra that connects to the earth. And then the 5 major chakras outside the body are the soul star, which is just above the head, that connects us to the non-physical dimensions. We also have above that a earth planetary chakra, whereas the root and earth star chakras are more connected to the core of the earth, whereas the chakra above the head, that's an earth planetary chakra, connects to the totality of the earth and its electromagnetic field that extends many miles out into space. And then above that is a solar system chakra that connects us to our entire solar system. Above that is a galactic chakra, which connects to the entire Milky Way galaxy. Above that is a universal chakra. And then one can also surmise there would be above that a multiversal chakra that connects us to all the universes in existence, because there are actually millions of universes that exist outside of this one. And then outside of all of the physical universes, actually the totality of what we call source consciousness or God or awareness, or the forces powering all of those universes. And so you can activate the chakras in many different ways, and I'll get into the specifics of more of those later. I'm just going to talk about a few of the primary aspects where you could activate all of them. And so you can balance all of your aspects of self through using the chakras. Whereas, when you talk to a nutritionist, they say, oh, well, your health is determined by your diet. If you talk to a psychologist, they say, well, it's determined by your thoughts. If you talk to, an emotional healing specialist, they say, well, your health is determined by your emotions. If you talk to a psychic, they say, well, it's dependent upon your spiritual alignment. But really, your health and your well-being in general and how aligned you are with yourself and life and the universe is dependent solely upon the chakras and their totality and above everything else. So it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual components all combined into one synchronistic union. And so you can wear different clothes that resonate with the chakras. So for example, right now I am wearing green and blue. And I did that intentionally because I knew I would have to speak quite a bit for this particular class, and blue resonates with the throat chakra, so it enhances and sends energy to that particular chakra, and then green resonates with the heart. And the heart is the most important chakra, which keeps you balanced and gives you the love. And I'll talk more about why it's so important later on. And you can also charge your chakras with sunlight. Spending time out in the sun charges all of your chakras simultaneously, just being in contact with your skin. Even though the sun specifically resonates most with the solar plexus and third eye chakras, because the solar plexus is the solar chakra, or most masculine chakra, and it resonates with the skin. And then the third eye chakra resonates with the element of light, which the sun projects a tremendous amount of light all the time, keeping us all alive every moment of every day. It's also, I think, important to note at this point that no one totally understands what the sun is or how it works. Like, scientists have sent satellites fairly close to the sun and gotten pictures of it, but obviously they can't send probes directly into it and see what's going on inside, because it would destroy the probe instantly due to the massive temperature variations of the sun, which is, I think, in the millions of degrees Fahrenheit. It would, vaporize the probe instantly. So no one knows exactly what's going on inside the sun, or how it works, or how it's generating basically an infinite amount of energy all the time. Every moment it's holding all the planets in a certain position through gravity waves, and then it's also keeping all life on Earth alive every moment of every day. And so you can also use food to resonate with the chakras. There are many types of food that resonate with various chakras. I'll talk more specifically about what foods resonate with chakras later on. And then you can also use color baths. So you can buy this type of organic liquid that you put in the bath, and it changes color, and those colors actually will resonate with the chakras. And then, so whatever color your bed sheets are will also dramatically influence your behavior, your thoughts and emotions, and then, of course, whatever colors you're wearing. So chakras are like a lens through which we experience everything in our subjective realities when we agree upon or decide on what is the objective reality in any given moment. And we also grow up through the chakras as we age in this physical dimension. So when we're first born, obviously our entire focus will be upon the root chakra, trying to survive. I need to stay here, I need to eat, I need to use the restroom, I need to breathe, I need to find out how I can stay in this reality so I don't die and go immediately back into the non-physical dimensions. And then once we get a certain level of mastery over that, we desire connection with other beings through the sacral chakra and start to feel our emotions. And so when we're young children, we first develop relationships with our parents, and we develop with peers, and the sacral chakra, develops later on into the sexual interactions that we experience in romantic relationships around the puberty age and then into adulthood. And then after that, we move into the solar plexus chakra. We desire how to learn how to do things in physicality and take control of ourselves and kind of separate from other people and build our own individuality, individual identity. And this first starts occurring in young children during these so-called terrible twos, when a child refuses to do anything they're told to do, but then it develops later on to where you're an adult. I'm not going to do what any government authority tells me to do, or what any employer tells me to do, and things like that. And then we would hopefully, if you spiritually awaken, then you can start to access some of the higher chakras. You start to learn how to love yourself and others, learn how to develop communication skills, learn how to develop your perceptive abilities, and then learn how to connect consciously with the non-physical dimensions that transcend physicality, and remember where you were before you incarnated in this particular vessel. And so, unfortunately, most of the world today is unconscious and is locked in the first three lower material masculine chakras of survival, sexuality, and power. And that's been going on for thousands of years, unfortunately, but now there is a global awakening happening where we are moving into the higher chakras as a species. And so we've been focused way too much on surviving rather than thriving in recent times. But now, our whole societal structure is totally unsustainable, as the universe is forcing us to build a society that truly works for everyone, where we can truly thrive and not be enslaved to governments, corporations, and banks, just focus on surviving and money and food and things like that every day, and fighting against other people. And so there are mirror walls or etheric barriers between the solar plexus and heart chakras, and also between the crown and soul star chakras. So there's a mirror wall or etheric barrier that prevents you from moving into the higher centers until you gain a certain level of mastery, reach a certain level of awareness, and spiritually awaken. So when you're unconscious, your life basically sucks all of the time for no reason. You can't remember what this reality is or who you are or how this works, and you're basically unconsciously reacting like an animal or a machine to everything that's going on in your external environment. You're totally at the mercy of whatever programming was thrust upon you when you were a child by your parents, peers, and authority figures, and you're basically totally lost in life all the time. You have no idea what's going on. You're not really paying attention to anything. You're not really listening to anyone, and you don't really care about anything either. But hopefully a circumstance, multiple circumstances will arise that will shake you out of that particular unconsciousness. Unfortunately, for most people in recent times, that has been tremendous amounts of suffering that forced them into conscious awakening. But it's my sincerest hope that in the near future, we will evolve to the point where we'll use knowledge as a primary doorway to spiritual awakening and enlightenment, rather than just pure, insane levels of suffering that's happened on this planet for the last several thousand years. So for the last several thousand years, it's been suffering that's led us into spiritual awakening, but I'm hoping that in more recent times and in the near future, it will be knowledge that allows us to awaken to our true self. And so once you pass through the mirror wall and you spiritually awaken, a whole new world opens up for you. Your life dramatically changes inside and outside, and your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual capabilities all dramatically increase in a very short period of time. The volume of your thoughts gets turned up about 10 times higher than it was before. Your emotions become way stronger than they were before, and you also become much more aware of what's going on inside of you and outside of you in any given moment. So for me personally, how I spiritually awakened was, unfortunately through lots of suffering, but the specific instance that brought me out of my unconscious slumber was I found this really fascinating YouTube series called Spirit Science in 2013. And after that, my life got a lot more strange and interesting almost immediately. Like I started seeing UFOs all over the Dallas, Texas area of the United States. I started meeting people with these crazy strong energy fields who could manipulate the minds of other people. I started getting into meditation, exploring entheogens, fasting, a number of things, and then it kind of just took off from there. And there's also an etheric barrier or mirror wall between the crown chakra and the soul star chakra. And so once you've mastered the first 7 internal chakras, you reach an incredibly high level of awareness, and you seek to know the specifics of what's going on in the non-physical dimensions, and seek to really master that soul star chakra, which is sort of the route to the next world. And that's kind of the culture of what ancient Egypt was about 5,000 years ago, as they were totally obsessed with the non-physical dimensions, death, and the afterlife, and preparing for it and doing spiritual work every day. They were sort of the opposite of our current materialistic Western culture that's totally obsessed with, materialism and money and sexuality, survival and power. And the ancient Egyptian culture itself was actually really, really fascinating because it followed an opposite progressional structure of almost every other culture that we have in recorded history. So they started at their peak with a tremendously high level of technology and spiritual awareness and spiritual practices, and they built these incredible structures, and then they just declined over time. And a lot of that is due to the yugas, which are these cycles of time where we rise to high levels of technology and spiritual development, and then we fall into barbarism and chaos. So they were kind of at that height of coming off of a golden age, and then it kind of just fell more and more into barbarism and chaos. So, if you look at the ancient Egyptian religions, they started out talking about, similar topics, the modern New Age movement and, modern physics, and then they just kind of descended into, well, let's just worship all these gods and forget about true spirituality. And then also the quality of their architecture and tools dramatically decreased over time, where they started out building buildings and tools and pieces of artwork that we could not even recreate today with our modern technology. It was so incredibly advanced, we don't even know how they did it, to such primitive and low quality work that we could easily recreate it today, even without modern technology. And so there are also male and female power centers within the chakras. So the masculine power center is the solar plexus chakra, which is the center of will, power, conscious control, forward movement, the temporal self, and conscious choice. And then the female power center is in the third eye chakra, which is the center of perception. And if you look at the behavior of men and women, this actually explains a lot of the behavior and the personality differences between men and women, but they're focused really on, significantly different things. So, a man is usually more focused on his personal power, whereas a woman is usually more focused on her perceptive mechanisms. But that's only the way we are naturally, and a man can develop his perceptive mechanisms and a woman can develop her willpower depending upon what actions they take in life. There's just, our innate tendencies to a large extent. And then also, men are imbued with much greater size and physical strength than most women, whereas women are actually imbued with greater non-physical strength and non-physical flexibility. So if you look at the behavior of women, they seem to know things or be able to do things internally that men are not able to do, or that most men are not able to do, like where they know things intuitively, or they can feel things that you're saying, like if they're lying to you, or if you're telling the truth, or things like that. And so that's also an innate tendency, though, that a woman can expand her physical strength and size to a certain extent, not to the same level where she could obtain the same size and strength as a man. And then a man could expand his non-physical flexibility and psychic capabilities to a certain extent, probably not to the same extent that a woman can. And so, there's different benefits and different detriments to incarnating as different gender, depending upon which gender you choose to incarnate into. So, if you choose to incarnate as a man, the physical aspects of life will typically be more easy for you to deal with. Whereas, or if you incarnate as a woman, the non-physical aspects of life will be easier to deal with, but the physical aspects of life will be more difficult for you to deal with. And, the probably initial idea someone would hear or ascertain by hearing that particular statement is that, oh, well, obviously it's way better and easier to be a man because you have greater physical size and strength. There's lots of dangers in the physical dimension. But reality is mostly non-physical, actually. So I would say it's probably better to have greater non-physical capabilities and flexibility, regardless of if you're a man or woman, just because you'll have a much better understanding of what exactly is going on in your inner and outer realities. You'll have a much higher mastery over the law of attraction, which we'll talk a bit more about later. So just like us, the Earth has chakras as well, which are located along certain ley lines or dragon paths, which are notable points with high concentrations of energy. And it's really interesting because the US government actually has military bases all over the world. We actually have military bases in, I think, about 150 countries, or 75% of the countries of the world. And one is to wonder, why are they building these bases out in the middle of nowhere or in every single country when there's no military conflicts going on? It's because they are trying to control the Earth's consciousness grid. There's a consciousness grid that covers the entire Earth, which is not visible to our physical senses, but we can feel it and perceive it to a certain extent with our non-physical senses through our thoughts and emotions. And so there are also ancient megalithic structures built upon these ley lines or dragon paths, which are positioned around the Earth. So some examples of this are the pyramids and tombs in Egypt, Göbekli Tepe, Teotihuacan, Baalbek, Easter Island, some pyramids in China, and a number of other locations. And it's amazing, there's actually this 10,000-mile long ring around the entire planet of megalithic structures that were built, at least 10,000 years ago, that no one knows exactly how they were built, and they're just, really amazing structures. So for example, there are stones at the pyramids in Egypt that are composed of granite, which is one of the hardest stones known on the planet, and it weighs 100,000 pounds, which would take, a dozen of our large movable cranes to position today. We can't, totally surmise as to how exactly they did it, although I have read some material that the Egyptians have access to really advanced sound technology that could basically create a mass canceled effect upon atomic matter. And then we've actually discovered a similar effect just in our own civilization using electricity. So in 1921, Thomas Townsend Brown and Paul Allen Beefield discovered the Beefield-Brown effect, where if you run a high level voltage or electrical current with a low amperage through a physical object, will actually create a mass cancel effect where the object basically weighs nothing, and then it can accelerate to any speed. And so some what are called unacknowledged special access projects, or these compartmentalized quasi-governmental entities, have taken possession of this particular technology and use it to build what are called electric magnetic gravitic propulsion systems, which are these discs that can actually go faster than the speed of light and are capable of space travel, which is also to a certain extent the result of reverse engineering crashed extraterrestrial vehicles from other solar systems. And so the Earth's root chakra is at Mount Shasta in California. And so when this chakra was in balance, the Native Americans of the era of the United States safeguarded the land. They performed rituals to make sure the Earth had a high frequency, and they had a really strong connection to the Earth and the animals and the plants and the energy fields that surround the Earth. And they tried to keep themselves grounded close to the Earth and harmony with themselves and other beings. But you can see today that it is obviously out of balance with the modern Americans of the United States. Americans are, for the most part, extremely ungrounded, materialistic, and don't do any rituals whatsoever to connect with the Earth or to harmonize their frequency with it or to raise its frequency. Thankfully, that is changing to a certain extent. There's a growing number of conscious people around the United States who are trying to harmonize themselves with the Earth and stay grounded and connect to the Earth Mother and her consciousness, because the Earth is also a conscious being. It's like we are, just much larger and supporting many conscious beings or semi-conscious beings on its surface. So synchronistically, the Earth's sacral chakra is located at Lake Titicaca in Peru, and Peru is also the new location of something called the Serpent of the Light, or the Earth's Kundalini. So we have a Kundalini along our spine, which activates the chakras, which I'll talk more about in a bit later. But the Earth also has its own Kundalini. And so whenever or wherever the Earth's Kundalini is concentrated, that becomes the spiritual center of the planet. So for the last about 2,000 years, that's been located over Tibet in China. And if you look at the spirituality of the people in that area, it's very high level spirituality, very pure of Tibetan Buddhism, where they really know how to access meditation and the crown chakra and the spiritual centers and inner peace and things like that. And that now it's moved to the Peruvian area of South America. And you can see there's been a massive change in the people of that area in recent times, as well as they're becoming much more concerned with spirituality. And particularly they use ayahuasca, which is a brew in the shamanic traditions of South America that contains high quantities of DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, that allows you to access the non-physical dimensions of the universe. So you drink this substance and then you're able to see the non-physical dimensions, download information from there. And then it also has numerous side effects depending upon your innate consciousness, like you may lose control of your bowels or your contents of your stomach or your mind or your emotions. It depends on the level of control of your mind. So if you have a high level of control of your mind and you know a lot about spirituality, you've done meditation before, then you'll usually have a pretty harmonious interaction with ayahuasca. But if you have a very low level of control of your mind, then ayahuasca may kind of blow out your circuits and it may not be very beneficial for you to use. And there's also the Nazca lines of South America, which are over the Earth's dragon paths or ley lines. And those are also really interesting because you can only see where they are from an aerial view. And supposedly the people were ancient people who did not have access to aerial vehicles at that time. So I want us to wonder, why they would construct artwork that you can only see what it is from an aerial viewpoint. And this would postulate that that was actually partially constructed by extraterrestrials, or that they had technology at that time that was able to make them able of air flight, that we just don't have any remnants of or access to that technology at this point. So the Earth's solar plexus chakra is in the Uluru Kata Juta in Australia, which you can see with the culture of the people in that area, basically resonated with them, that they're very oriented towards solar plexus energy, just like most of the planet is today. And the Earth, or that particular area of Australia, also has a tribal culture called the Aborigines, who have a fascinating culture, and they're apparently at a different level of consciousness than the most of the humans today. So they're basically 5 levels of sentient consciousness that were created or postulated to exist by the ancient Egyptians, which are differentiated by a chromosomal content, a physical size, and a type of consciousness or inner mental and emotional faculties. So at the first level, there's 42 and 2 chromosomes. There's an average height of 4 to 6 feet tall, and it's a harmonic or harmonious level of consciousness where the people at that level are pure and they strive to maintain harmony with themselves and the earth and other beings. And so most humans today are at the second level of sentient consciousness, which has 44 and 2 chromosomes, is about 5 to 7 feet tall average size, and is a chaotic level of consciousness, which you can easily see we're at a chaotic level of consciousness in the world today. There's a tremendous amount of conflict and war and unconscious basically fighting against each other. And so one would ask at that point, why are there any chaotic levels of consciousness at all? And that's because you have to experience both polarities to truly know the self. And it's necessary to move between those chaotic levels to get to the pure levels. It's sort of like how there are black keys in a piano and then there's white keys. And the black keys are necessary to exist because they allow certain chord progressions and songs to be played that the white keys can't do on their own. And so the third level of consciousness we're evolving into now, which is also called Christ consciousness, is about an average size of 10 to 16 feet tall, has 46 and 2 chromosomes, and is a harmonious level of consciousness. We also have an elongated skull at that point. And the ancient Egyptians actually had sculptures and pictures of various beings at all 5 levels. Particularly at the third level, there was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt called Akhenaten, who was actually 15 feet tall with an elongated skull. His wife, Nefertiti, I think was 12 feet tall with an elongated skull. And so he was actually at the third level of consciousness. And they killed him, unfortunately, because he was trying to give them harmonious spirituality and tell them you don't need to worship all these gods. You can access God within you. And he told the military, you can't just go out and kill people because you want to. We have to only just defend ourselves. So the military and the people of Egypt did not like him because they were very unconscious or very attached to these dark methods of spirituality and military conflict. And so they killed him, unfortunately. And also, there's a Tool song called 46 and 2, which Tool is a rock band in the United States who has various songs about consciousness in the universe, which also talks about these levels of consciousness or evolution that we're evolving into the third level of consciousness now. And also, if you look, even in recent times, we've been getting taller and smarter as a species. So, for example, at the Constitutional Convention in the 1700s, George Washington was the tallest person there, and he was only 6 feet tall. Whereas today, there's men who are over 7 feet tall and women who are pretty close to that particular regard. And we are also much more intelligent than we were even just a few hundred years ago, or probably even 50 years ago. And so we're massively accelerating our evolutionary development. And so the fourth level of sentient consciousness has 48 and 2 chromosomes, is 30 to 35 feet tall, and is a chaotic level of consciousness. The Egyptians had statues of that as well. And then the final fifth level of sentient consciousness is 50 to 60 feet tall, has 50 and 2 chromosomes, as a harmonious level of consciousness. I don't know about you, when I'm 50 to 60 feet tall, I would love to just pick up cars and toss them like they're baseballs. And so the Earth's heart chakra is in Glastonbury, Shaftesbury in England. And so if you look at the English country, there's a great deal of green there, which is no coincidence that the heart chakra is over that particular area of the world. And then, you can see that the heart chakra is closed today because there's a great deal of unconscious and fear in that particular area of the world, but that is changing to a certain extent. And then also over this area of the world, there are a great deal of crop circles. There are thousands upon thousands of crop circles in England, particularly more so than any other area of the planet. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the extraterrestrials intentionally place those crop circles there over the heart chakra because the heart chakra is the most important chakra, and the crop circles affect the consciousness of our planet. And so if you look at the crop circles, there are these incredible sacred geometric patterns or pictures of extraterrestrials or these really intricate patterns that, one has to wonder how exactly were those made. And, there's obviously ones that were made by people that are very low quality and could easily be replicated. But the ones that were made by extraterrestrials, you can't really recreate, or we're not sure how it was made. And there are these really interesting magnetic particles that are found at those crop circles. And then also there's this amazing video that you can see on YouTube of crop circles being made in 30 seconds by these little balls of light, and then they disappear immediately after that. And I want to wonder, what exactly are those things and why are they there? But those were actually also seen during World War II, the so-called Foo Fighters, where those objects would appear at certain battles during World War II, and then it would actually also appear sometimes inside of airplanes and then disappear immediately after that. And the extraterrestrials started showing up here around World War II because that was when we started detonating thermonuclear weapons. They have bases here, and then also they didn't want us to blow up the planet. They also don't want us tearing holes in the fabric of space-time, which nuclear weapons can do to a certain extent. And so the Earth's throat chakra is directly over the Great Pyramid in Egypt, which is also not a coincidence. The Egyptians knew this, and they built the pyramid directly over that intentionally because they knew it was a very strong power center of the planet. And if you look at the ancient Egyptians, you can see the throat chakra was definitely open at that time because the ancient Egyptians were extremely intelligent people, if not even more intelligent than we are today. And they had very strong communication mechanisms to easily channel information from the non-physical dimensions, whereas you can see it's mostly closed today over Egypt because there's a great deal of conflict and war in that particular area. There's a lot of uprising and governmental control and things like that. But hopefully that is changing to a certain extent. And there's also a picture here of the Sphinx. There's some interesting information coming out about the Sphinx in recent times. The Sphinx is actually much older than we originally thought it was. So at the top of the Sphinx, which you can see here, there's a great deal of air erosion, which is not uncommon in Egypt. That's all over all the buildings in both modern and ancient Egyptian buildings. But at the base of the Sphinx, which is kind of here in this picture, there is water erosion. And not just water erosion, but water erosion that can only be made by thousands upon thousands of years of continuous rainfall, which has not happened in the area of ancient Egypt for at least 10 to 12,000 years, which means the Sphinx has to be at least that old. Which has been postulated by Robert Schoch and John Anthony West. You can read more about their material online and in various books, but which says that the ancient Egyptian culture was probably also at least that old, and that there's a tremendous amount of evidence there was some kind of massive worldwide flood that wiped out some kind of super advanced ancient civilizations, actually more advanced than we are today.